Within 30 days, I hit 100,000 followers. The business exploded. What no one talks about is what happens that first month that you slow down. The second there's a tiny downturn, you're just crushed. A rush of leads 1 month is a lot of lost revenue potential.
That challenges everything we've been taught.
People want you to do well, just not better than them.
And everyone's like, oh, I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
Wrong. That's wrong. $2 million is where businesses go to die.
You don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect.
Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, I am excited because we actually have our first duo couple episode. So I cannot wait for you to dive in today. We are joined by the absolutely amazing Kenda and Soren Laney. These are two individuals, two entrepreneurs that I deeply respect. Not only are they completely badass at business, but they are also a power couple because not only are they scaling this massive business, but all the while they also are two that I really respect in the way that they put their marriage and their relationship first before anything else when it comes to the business. And so, to rewind a little bit, Kenda went from having a couple $100s in her bank account to now scaling a 7-figure business in record time, hitting nearly $10,000 in their very first month of operating and continuing to shatter milestones month after month ever since then. But what's even really more impressive than just their business as well is also how they have done this as not only like true partners in business, but true partners in life. They both bring their unique strengths to create really something that is truly different, but complementary to both themselves individually as well. And what I love about their approach is that they're not just teaching theory. They are someone that I really respect because they teach what actually works. Everything that they speak to, everything that they teach is something that they have lived, embodied, executed, and learned from. So I want to share with you some of the things you're going to take away from today. Number one, they talk about the burn the ships mentality that allowed them to scale so rapidly while having nothing to lose, and why that became their biggest advantage when Kenda then dropped out of college mid-semester to bet everything on starting this business. They also discuss their revolutionary neuromarketing framework, which Kenda and Soren are famous for, that gets them past the 3 decision layers of the brain and why traditional buyer types are more like the 5 love languages than anything else. They also discuss the instant feedback loop strategy that helps to become their secret weapon and how having someone to give you real-time feedback while you create content and marketing was the difference between their 200 views and being able to go viral. They talk about why they intentionally stopped chasing virality with their content and now make more money with 1,000 targeted views than they ever did with millions. They discuss the brutal truth about scaling too fast and what actually breaks when you go from 0 to 7 figures in a few months, and why most people are not actually equipped to handle that growth. And last but not least, they discuss how to navigate being partners in business and life without also wanting to kill each other and their honest take on working together 24/7. Why most people's approach to work-life balance is also actually backwards. So this is one of those episodes where I will say you are going to want to grab a paper and pen, not only because they're going to teach you incredible insights around scaling and marketing, but also because I will say this episode is going to teach you just as much about some insights you're going to want to be aware of in having a partnership in business, or maybe for you with your partner in life. So with all that being said, let's get into today's episode. All right, you guys, welcome back to Ambitious. I am so excited. I was just saying before we press record that this is the first duo episode that we've done, and there could not be a better pairing. We have the absolute power couple of Soren and Kenda Laney. So guys, welcome to Ambitious. I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks for having us. We're so
Yeah,
excited to be here. That's
Yeah,
such a good intro. Wow.
I can't wait. Honestly, I have had the absolute pleasure of knowing you guys for a couple years. And I was just saying that I feel like I'm able to see your 2 personalities, the 2 ways that you see the business. And it's such this harmonious thing because I feel like you guys have different traits, different skills, different perspectives. And then when you bring it together, it really is a powerful duo. So for anyone maybe who isn't, everyone's familiar. Let's just be honest. Everyone knows about Kenda Laney on the internet. This is not something you're probably seeing for the first time for her name. But I would love, because you guys really have been in this together from the beginning. Most people see, I'm sure, your quote unquote highlight reel. Maybe they see, the level of success you've had in business. They see your exposure online. They see your following, and they see who you and you guys have built to be now. But what did that really look like for you guys creating like this brand and this company and this identity? Like if you kind of take us back, what did that journey look like?
So I'll tell you from my side, and then I think Soren probably will have some different insights because I'm always the one that tells the story. So this all started, believe it or not, if I were to trace all of the dominoes back, I think it goes back to being born with eye cancer. And at the time of my diagnosis, there was a 2% survival rate. And so the doctors told my parents, first, we'll try to save her life and we'll worry about her sight later. And so I had my right eye removed when I was 6 weeks old, and I have a prosthetic eye. And because of that, my parents ended up putting me in therapeutic horseback riding to help with orientation and mobility and depth perception and all of those types of things. And I just really fell in love with it, and ended up being good at it. So my parents moved from Denver across the state of Colorado to the middle of nowhere so that I could have horses. So we got 6 horses, and I got
Wow.
into barrel racing, and I was a rodeo queen, and it was so much fun. And through the rodeo industry, I kind of got taken under the wing of a mentor who is very successful in that space. And I was so desperate just to be in her space and to have anything to do with her. And just as a teenager, I ended up doing social media for her. And it wasn't really an official thing. It was more of just, you're a teenager, you understand this stuff, go figure it out. And I ended up being really good at it. She now has multiple 8, and one of them is a 9-figure company. And so that's how I got my start. I learned social media. Then I went to college, and I was planning on going to law school. My degree was political science. And when I met Soren, I was 18, and we got married 3 months after we met.
Wait,
And
what? I
yeah,
didn't know that. I know you guys got married young, but I didn't know that. 3 months. Okay.
yeah, we met
Okay.
at BYU I do, ring by spring or your money back. And so yeah, we met October 4th and we were married December 28th.
Wow.
And I think it sounds fast, and it was fast, but also I think we'd known each other, what was it, Soren, like 3 or 4 days. And we were like, so hypothetically, if we were to,
Yeah, it was somewhere in those first couple weeks.
yeah, it was
But we
like
also,
very
so
fast.
like,
We're like, we're gonna get
we
married,
hung out
yeah.
basically 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
we just clicked from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
Which also goes to show when you know, you know. And I know
Yeah.
everyone always says that, but like I feel like 3 months, like yes, maybe for someone for a standard timeline, it seems fast. But I also think there's people who date for 12 years who
Mm-hmm.
then split. So I feel like the timeline aspect doesn't necessarily mean depth.
1,000%. And that's what it was like. It's so hard to explain. We just knew. And as much as it sounds like a whirlwind romance, there was also a lot of like logic and thought that went into it because
Mm.
we had the same values, we had the same goals, we had the same things that we wanted out of life. We were going down similar paths, and we were just kind of in lockstep from the second that we met, and it's just kind of continued that way. And so we were like, well, why wait? We obviously know this is going to happen. So we got married. And
Okay.
so that was December of 2019, which is important because 3 months later, the world shut down.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, Soren was doing summer sales. And so we were going down to Dallas to do that. We ended up quarantined with my mom and dad for a month because we couldn't get into our apartment yet down there because of all the COVID stuff happening. And that summer, I was really sick. I was having some like hormonal issues and all kinds of things, and I was just so sick. And so I was originally supposed to do sales with him. I did for a little bit, but I was so sick that I couldn't go out and knock doors. And so I was sitting at home, and I had these social media skills, and I also knew how to build websites and do all of that. And so I started just taking on a couple website clients. And then it kind of came full circle back because once they had the website, they were like, oh, well, we need help driving traffic to this website. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, I know how to do that. So I started taking on some clients for social media, and I changed my major from poli-sci to software engineering. And Soren was like, why don't you post on TikTok? Like, you should get on TikTok and just like talk about the stuff you know about marketing and blogs and SEO and all the things. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I started kind of posting like just personal stuff for a couple months, and I had a couple of videos like really pop off and go viral, just like personal things. And then I started posting the business and social media content on TikTok, and within 30 days of starting doing that, I hit 100,000 followers on my TikTok account, and it just, the business exploded. And I, at that time, did not have the skills to build an agency. And so I shifted from management to consulting, which was a great decision. And it's been so fun. We've worked with so many people. And in this past, I want to say like 6 months, it's been really fun because we've started to come back full circle. And some of our higher level private clients, we've actually started doing management for and building out that side of the business.
Cool.
So it's just been kind of a whirlwind. Yeah.
And like when you guys were at that point where obviously you're like, okay, like I know how to do social. Do you guys remember this moment where you went from like, I have a skill to I'm making a business? Because I think that obviously you often talk like, and I know you've mentioned before in your marketing, like people should never sell something that they haven't done. And so we always talk with this idea of like, someone who just wants to create something versus I have a skill. So you have this skill and social, websites. Where was that like point? Like Soren obviously was like, hey, TikTok, there's an opportunity here. Like, do you guys remember that conversation where you're like, wow, this is not just I'm posting on social media, like we're creating a company. Like, do you guys remember when that shift kind of happened?
I know for me, the company had long been established. By the time I figured out, I was like, oh, this is real. And I was like, man, people just keep paying me for this, and they want to talk to me about this, and
Yeah.
they're paying to talk to me, and they just keep coming, and what I'm telling them is working. I don't know. I guess I'm just going to keep doing this. And it was crazy because, and Soren and I talk about this too sometimes, is that a lot of those early stages of business that a lot of people typically take more time to get through, each of those stages was like a month for me. The first month, we made like $9,999. It was like almost 10,000 that like first month, and it just kept like every single month was a new milestone. And so we blew through that so fast, which is part of why I'm even more so than I was then so passionate about marketing and content marketing and visibility, is because I know that if you can just get enough eyes on your business, you can figure out what to do with that. And I believe very strongly, and this is why I focus so hard on the organic marketing, is that every person should be able to gather the skills to market themselves and create that lead flow for their business without having to work within this pay to play corporate landscape of, raising capital and throwing it into ads and testing and all of that, because that's just not doable for the average person. But it's a skill that anyone can learn. And so that's why I think it's so important to share what we do, just because, yeah, I think people should be able to market themselves organically. And if you know how to do that and you don't have to work within this pay to play system, you'll never go hungry.
Well,
So,
I think that when people hear that journey, right? If you're like, I kind of like start this and then I hit a 10K month. And obviously you guys like catapulted scaling after that.
yeah.
You mentioned obviously like you guys focused a lot on visibility and you focused on your content and your organic. And I think like you said, there's a lot of people who maybe have slower growth.
Yeah.
Maybe from your side, Soren, like what do you think were some of the things that allowed it to grow as fast as it did? Maybe things that you didn't even potentially focus on. You're like, we didn't look over here, and that's why we were able to grow.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of funny because we're equating in this question, we're equating business growth to social media growth,
Yeah.
which has aspects of truth, but isn't entirely true. We have clients with like 5,000 followers who've done like 30,
Yeah.
40, 50K months.
Mhm.
You don't need a large following to like absolutely kill it. And like the big differentiator, and we were talking about this before we started, and you mentioned it when we started, we're like this duo. I was like the mini director behind the camera when Kenda was blowing up. When I'm not the director behind the camera, Kenda's content usually doesn't do quite as well.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't that way, but when you have someone giving you instantaneous feedback, because usually what people do is they record their content, they post it, and then that's how they get feedback. And a lot of people don't
Yeah.
understand what feedback they're actually getting. You get 200 views, your hook is terrible, right? You look at the retention graph, it's a straight line down, right? So getting like instantaneous feedback on what your content is, just making sure you have a really good hook, making sure you're enunciating clearly. I'm terrible at that. It's why my content sucks, part of it, and then making sure you're just direct and to the point. Oftentimes people repeat themselves. And
Yeah.
it's like those little technical things that allow for like when we're talking about like views, like that exponential growth in views on social media versus, when we're talking about business growth on social media, it's a lot more of like the messaging, which is something I struggle at more. Kenda's much better at that than I am, especially with, other clients we've worked with. But yeah, because that's, building that community,
Yeah.
working on how you clearly communicate to people viewing your content and like what you do. Because a lot of people, like we've had clients like they'll post a video and they're like, I went viral. And I'm like, great, what's your video about? And they're like, I was eating popcorn on the couch and I was talking about this new Netflix series.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And that's related to your business. How?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, just again, being clear
The
and
instant
concise
feedback
with your
loop.
messaging is what brings clients in, whether you're getting views or not too. So
Well, I think that's huge, right? Because I think that's a massive point is like most people are getting their feedback after it's already out. And so there's like this delay really in understanding the data of what worked or didn't work before you did it. And so for you guys, does that mean that at that stage you kind of were like in collaboration together for a lot of it? Like you were really talking about messaging together. Is the video good together? How to refine it together? It was kind of a collaborative effort.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think that most of the concepts I think were things that I don't even want to say that I came up with. There are things that like would come into either of our minds just through us having a conversation about things,
Yeah.
and then he would kind of give me the hook to use. The like OG series that absolutely exploded, the Growing Up Around Billionaires series. That was Soren's idea. And he helped me with the pacing of the videos and the hook, and then like making sure that we edited every single space out of them and all the technical things. And so yeah, I think that instant feedback loop was massive. The other thing that I'll say that's like not as much of a technical thing, maybe a little bit more abstract, but I think the idea of like burn the ships, commit to something, go all the way in. And I think we were able to do that because at that point, we really had nothing to lose. And so, we had a couple $100 in our bank account, newly married in a 800 square foot apartment. And, we were like, worst case scenario, Soren goes back out and knocks some doors and makes some sales.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, well, I'm going to start pouring my time into this. And we've never shared this story, but our very first like argument, I would call it, that we had when we got married, and we'd only been married for like, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 months. And the business was exploding and people were booking in these calls and I was focusing on marketing and doing all the things, but I was also still in school. And so at a certain point I had to choose where I was going to put my time, and I just knew, I just had a feeling, and I just was pouring it into the business. And so I failed one of my classes that I was in and then ended up just like dropping the other however many mid-semester.
Yeah.
And Soren was not impressed because I mean,
livid is a better term.
yeah, livid is a better term.
To be clear.
Soren was so mad. Because, I mean, to be fair, at the time, it was a lot of money. And, we were taking out like student loans to pay for that. And so he was like, you're failing these classes. Like, you're just not turning stuff in. You're just failing these classes that we're paying for. Like, we don't have any money. And I'm like, wait, but it's over here. Like, just give me a minute.
Yeah.
And that was our first fight.
Well,
and
did you guys, with the education piece, did you guys grow up being told that like education was the safety net? Like, is that kind of Soren when you were like, we have to fulfill this commitment? Was it the money side for you, or was it this like belief around what the education might have represented for her?
Education wasn't presented as a safety net. In my family, it was presented more of an opportunity. So neither of my parents finished college when they were young. My mom went back and finished college online, and she attended like 3 different universities to end up getting her degree. And my mom was terribly successful in IT. I say terribly successful because, she was top of the ladder essentially in the town we were in. If she'd been in a bigger town, she would have been, amazingly successful. I just say terribly because she was limited by where we live.
She's currently building a company that's going to be $1 billion company.
Yeah, if she can ever market it. That's a whole story.
She'll start marketing.
That's where you guys come in.
Yeah, we're trying to help her with it. Yeah, so it was presented more of an opportunity. I finished my degree while we were, business had already crossed 7 figures, for multiple years, and we drove back across the country so I could finish my degree because
he only had one semester left. It was
if I don't, she's going to kill me type vibe.
Got it.
I was also, funny enough, I was mad at Kenda. I grew up on a farm. I will work 16, 18-hour days and not blink.
Yeah.
That's just the expectation. My dad, when he was young, he was a logger. Highest mortality rate of almost any trade in the U.S. and hardest people ever in Southern Oregon. Like, you walk up and down mountains, they're not tall, but they're steep and they're deadly. And then he farmed. He's farmed for the last 35
It's like in your blood to be scrappy.
Yeah. And if I decided to go farm a ranch, like on my mom's side, I'd be like a 6th generation rancher. And funny fact about my mom's side of the family, they were pioneers in Oregon. It wasn't hard enough for them to walk across the country to Portland. No, they walked back into Oregon, into like the John Day area, and then they would drive their cattle down the Columbia Gorge, in the fall to sell.
Let's just complicate the situation.
Because, just the trek wasn't hard enough itself. But so I'll work 24/7. Kenda has a different temperament than I do. So I would go to school and then I'd work on the business or do other things. Anyways, but her parents, when we got married, thought I was going to ruin Kenda and that she would drop out of college. And so part of the reason why I was frustrated about Kenda dropping out was because of I'm a petty person, just because of what her parents would say.
Soren's like, they can't be right. You have to go to school. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Kenda won that argument.
Yeah.
But turns out it was all for the better. So,
well, your parents were pressed too when I was going to drop out, and I made a deal with them.
My dad was?
Your dad was super
my mom hoped he would finish. They were a little pressed, but it's funny. My parents were more supportive of her starting this business than, they have been of me of a lot of things, kind of. Not that my parents aren't supportive of me, but it was just really funny because they were overly supportive of Kenda, I feel like, with most things.
Well, I made a deal with them. I was like, because they kept bringing up me finishing school. And so I made a deal with them. I was like, okay, if I can get this business over $1 million this year, I'll send you the receipts.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear another word about college ever again. And they were like, okay. And we did it. And I sent them the Stripe screenshot.
They haven't said a word about college.
They've never said
Now, my mom, she continued to beat me. I guess I should have put my name on that document, but
Yeah, you should have gotten in on the agreement, but
yeah.
Well, in this phase, you guys are building this massive business. You're both in the process of finishing school to keep your commitments to whoever you were trying to arrange them with. And I guess my curiosity is as you said, kind of at that moment, you guys didn't have a lot of financial backing to you. It seems like people emotionally supported you, obviously, but they weren't necessarily financially supporting you guys building this business. And I'm wondering, obviously you had And Soren, you made a really good point. A lot of, yes, social growth, but the business growth too. Do you feel like when you guys kind of quote unquote blew up, or you had this initial momentum from social, but also from, sales,
Mhm.
do you feel like that was from this aspect of like scrappiness? It's like the two of you, we've got nothing to lose. Like, how much of that growth do you think was the scrappiness and the hustle? Or to your point of feedback, do you think it really was like we were super strategic? Because I know some people wonder at the beginning when they're trying to really scale or they're trying to really like, have massive growth. Is it about speed and is it about scrappy? Or is it about like being really intentional about every single step and having this plan and being like super intricate about, the individual pieces? And like for you guys, which do you think, or maybe both, that you saw really contributed to that massive surge of growth, both on social and in sales?
So we both share strategic and scrappy.
It's a mix.
Kenda is in the moment, this has to be perfect before we launch it type of a person. Medium, like in a couple of months, she's scrappier than I am. But then like long term, I'm more of the strategic thinker. I knew I always wanted to start a business. I was always told that like that was kind of like the way to financial freedom, work for yourself, blah, 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 blah. But
And I didn't want to have a business
yeah.
also. Like when we were dating,
Oh, okay.
yeah, no, literally. Well, because I knew what was required. I grew up
Mm,
watching people run billion-dollar businesses, literally, family, friends. I knew exactly what it took to build a team and to build an organization and what type of hours and demand was
mm.
is going to be put on you. And I remember this very distinctly. I don't know if Soren remembers this, but we were in the car one night. I think we'd known each other so like 2 weeks. So we were probably engaged. And I don't remember at what point, but we were at least dating. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to law school. And he was like, well, would you ever want to like start a law firm? And I was like,
Mm,
no, absolutely not. I would never, like, I might want to be partner, maybe equity partner in a firm, but I would never want to start a business. I would never want to have that responsibility and have to market myself and bring in clients of my own. I would never, ever want to do that. And in a lot of ways, I feel like when that initial momentum started, and I don't know if Soren felt the same way because I don't know if we ever really talked about it, but like I kind of in those first probably 6 months, in my head, I was just thinking, let's make as much as we can right now for as long as this lasts, and then we'll just invest it in real estate and we'll be fine.
mm.
So I don't
And then
know.
obviously it's also done real estate, but it's also done a lot of other things. So you guys
Yeah.
obviously have, if we fast forward, you have this incredible business today. And with this, you also have, which I think is something that a lot of people have seen with your brand, you have a lot of visibility.
Hmm.
And with that, I know that there's a lot of amazing pieces to that. You get a lot of people who know your brand, who know your name. There's a lot of sales benefits to it. There's a lot of upside. But I'm wondering, like, with that, did you guys ever see or feel a downside to the visibility? Like, I feel like everybody, to your point, Soren, like I went viral and it's like everyone's desire is to be seen by the world. But like when that actually happened for you guys, and I think you said it happened in 30 days, which is insane. So you
Hmm.
go from some people know me on the internet to tons of people on the internet know who I am within 30 days. Like, was there anything maybe that most people didn't see or maybe don't really understand about what that actually looked like to have that happen so fast?
Well, I think there's a few things that come up for me. The first is that, of course, there's the hate comments and the negativity, and it's very overwhelming and unnatural to have so many people who know who you are
Mm,
and who have an opinion about you and think they know you from a single comment or a single message or screenshot or a post that you made on your social media. And I think for me, in the beginning, it triggered a lot of, I think, emotions that I hadn't necessarily dealt with. I was bullied a lot in school. Just, I mean, that's what happens when you have one eye and you're a child, and elementary school kids are cruel. And so the negative comments, what I noticed was that the ones that really got to me were the ones that in a way confirmed things that I already thought about myself. And so everyone always says like entrepreneurship is this like personal development journey that you're never prepared for and really didn't know you were signing up for. And so I had to work through a lot of those things and realize like that I had to get to a point where I no longer require people to like me. The people who don't, I've decided that I would be a little insulted if they did. And so that was one. The second thing was with such explosive growth, you're watching Stripe and you're watching your analytics and they're just green and up and to the left. What no one talks about is what happens that first month that you slow down or you don't make as many sales or you're sick for a couple of weeks so you can't take sales calls or you can't create content. And at the same time as there's so much excitement because you're growing, the second there's a tiny downturn, you're just crushed. And so I think the anxiety that came with it, I wasn't prepared for at all, because when you're watching Stripe double every month and then it starts to flatline, you start to feel like you've done something wrong, or that maybe you lost your touch, or that you're not good enough to make it. And with time, you realize that businesses plateau. That's what happens. And then you have to make shifts and adjustments to remove what's blocking you to get to the next level. And that's just part of it. That's what it is. But in the beginning, it's incredibly jarring. And I know Soren will have thoughts and feelings about this. The final thing was, I guess, kind of whiplash, is you reach a certain threshold of success and you start to feel like everyone around you has their hand out. And so you become very defensive in a way, because it seems as though everyone's trying to get something from you. Friends from high school are reaching out, asking for a job. People are asking for money. It kind of can spiral out of control in a way. And on some level, I knew that already, but it was jarring to see it with people that I knew and people that were closer to me. It was really disconcerting to observe it actually kind of come to fruition in that way.
Well, and I see that even in the business space too. Like I know I have a lot of people that I know or that I've worked with in the past who have these huge names, and they'll find that even, mentors they hire, peers they work with, agencies they hire will leverage their name as a way to grow or expand even their own business. And they start to wonder, okay, well, does this person care about me because I'm an account or because I'm a name or a brand, or because they actually care about me and care about my business? And so I think like it's hard, like you said, because now you're like so exposed and you wonder like, who can I trust? And does this person really care about me? Or is it because there's some other hidden agenda? Right. So I so resonate with that, as a lot of conversations I have with people behind the scenes. And like Soren, for you, what did that look like from your perspective when you guys were growing so massively? Like maybe things that people outside of these huge like accolades and numbers and like bulletins and screenshots that they really kind of didn't see, that you were able to see from behind the curtain.
Yeah, I'll just give a different perspective. The people I used to work with. Yeah, Kenda's gonna love this. It's so funny. So it was a direct sales organization, like door to door. And like I made good money for college doing it. They make good money. And they're very entrepreneurial, real estate. They want you to succeed until you want to
Until you
leave.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
And when we left, it was really funny. It was like my birthday, and I got a text, and we'd actually hired one of the guys to come do sales for us. And he was like doing pretty good. He wasn't like the best sales guy even there. I just thought he might be better at this. He was really good at recruiting, not good at sales. And, anyways, he texted me. He was like, man, no one believes you guys are doing what you're doing, but I just wanted to let you know that, I stood up for you guys. And it was so funny because at the same time, like, it was like my birthday. And I was like, all these guys that I thought were my friends, I just got told that they didn't believe in me and that they didn't believe what we were doing and like all of this other stuff. And like, it's just funny because like, you just kind of have to remember, like, people want you to do well, just not better than them. and people are going to act in their own self-interest, right? And if you remember those two things and keep those expectations in line, anything better you'll be happy with, right? And anything worse, like you'll be expecting. So that's just kind of like how I treat it. I don't try and control things that I can't control. And I just try and, take a very pragmatic approach to like when people want a job or when people ask for something,
Mm. Mhm.
So
And like in this, obviously, with massive growth like that, there's, as you guys were saying, like there's a stretch of your friend circle. There's a stretch of like, okay, like who can I trust now? There's a stretch of your own identity, like you're saying, kind of like the bank accounts are going up and then they're down, but then they're up again. And it's kind of like you're riding this roller coaster.
Yeah.
That's like there's an emotional mindset piece there. And then I'm also wondering strategy wise, like everyone wants to blow up, but also we want to recognize like if you had 5 people in your coffee shop and then tomorrow I'm going to give you 50,000,
Yeah.
while it sounds nice hypothetically, I'm wondering like strategically, how did you guys like brace for impact? Because and do you think that, maybe was there a downside to growing too fast? Do you think that that's possible to grow too fast? Because I think everybody and their mom on the internet wants to 4x, 5x, 6x their business, right? And it seems really sexy to do that. But obviously, we all know what happens behind the curtain in order to really sustain and kind of like be able to handle the load of that level of business. So, like, you guys, grow your socials. And then, right after that, you're seeing the business start to kind of follow suit. How did you guys brace for impact strategically, like back end structure wise, to be like, holy crap, we've got sales calls, we've got inquiries, we've got people closing? Like, how do we navigate this when it kind of feels like it probably happened overnight?
I think, well, you and I were on the phone one day, and this has always stuck with me. And I ask my own clients this to this day. You asked me if the business were to double tomorrow, what would break?
Mm.
And I rattled off my list. And there's a really great book. I love it. Soren's going to roll his eyes. It's called The Road Less Stupid. It's a really good book. And he suggests that you do, I think he says daily, but I sit down like once a week for my thinking time.
Mm.
And that is one of the things that I think on is if everything were to double tomorrow, what would break? And I work towards adjusting those things. And so that was great insight to have very early on. The other thing is like you can scale delivery if you can find somebody who understands how to build a decent system.
Mm.
Like that's usually not the hardest piece. I think the hardest piece is the team.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And so hiring the right people, training, consistently developing, managing, and learning to switch from giving people a to-do list to instead giving them responsibility. That's a really hard shift, and it's necessary to be able to scale. And I'll let Soren talk about some of the mistakes we made with the team. But one of the big things that most people aren't prepared for is like they'll get a burst of leads if they do go viral, and then their sales actually drop. Because what happens is they start booking too far out on their calendars, and then their no-shows go way up. And then they're like, why am I making no money? What's going on? And their system just kind of gets overrun. And so, for a lot of people, it's actually better to get less leads that are more qualified and refine your sales process than it is to have that burst of virality, because most
Mm.
people are not equipped to handle it. And even now, sometimes, like when we have a video go viral, kind of like, okay, guys, batten down the hatches. Like, here we go. Because it will rock the boat. It really does. And you'd think, oh, look at all these leads, which is
Right.
great. But there's just so many things that are liable to break within that process. And then, yeah, I think with that huge visibility and bringing on just like such an influx of clients, we then had to hire for delivery. And Soren has lots of feelings about that. Would you like to share some of your thoughts
Yeah,
on
well, I think
community?
the whole thing they always say, right, is like it's you want to replace yourself, but also doing that is easier said than done.
Mhm.
Because at least for me or for a lot of businesses that I've worked with, when you're in the earlier stages of business, you might not have the financial resources yet to
Mhm.
hire a quote unquote specialist, right? So like
Mhm.
to your point, maybe you have all these leads, but then let's just say you want to bring in a closer. You're like, well, do we want to give away 20% of, or 10, 15, 20% of our overall sales to this closer potentially? See, there's this aspect when you're like, I need to bring in team because I have so much demand, but also doing so means that to bring in someone good, they're probably going to ask a certain level of compensation. And so I think
Yeah.
most people go, okay, well, let's just like spend less and we'll train them up. But with that, obviously, as you guys know, there's a lot of experiences that go with having to be in that phase before you have all the cash flow to bring in those like really top performers or those high level people. So like Soren, when it came to, management and leadership and hiring and kind of, I guess, like team evolution, what were maybe some of the lessons you guys learned when it came to the team side and building up like the team that could sustain like the level of business you guys knew was going to happen?
Yeah, great question. There's a lot of theory out there. We definitely try to do our best. I feel like this is something we're not overly skilled at. I think we're getting better at it. I think it's one of the hardest things to do
Mm,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of aspects that go into it between like communication, training, all of that. My really hot takes though are like, you probably shouldn't automate anything unless you've been doing it for 3 months because entrepreneurs basically all have ADHD and change stuff 24/7,
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I think the other thing when it comes to it, I mean, I think most businesses, like, agencies, you'll probably cap yourself out, if you have good processes. And as long as you're charging, we'll call it fair market value, right?
Mhm.
I think you can do 50K on that. A lot of like, if you're doing information or consulting, you can push 100K months with that. And that, the key thing is getting your pricing to the point where you can have enough margin where you can comfortably hire that first person.
Yeah.
And it's like, who do you hire first? Most of the time, it's probably either what, we often recommend to clients is either an executive assistant
Mhm.
or a closer. Usually, the closer, depending on what your lead flow is and what your price point is and all of that, that is going to get you the most time back. And the funny thing is there's people out there that say, "Oh, the founder should, do sales calls because it's what makes the most money. It's directly tied to revenue." Da 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 da. And I'm like, yes, but how many founders have you met? Again, successful ones, slightly different, but how many ones have you met that are really good at sales?
True.
The successful ones, they end up being good at sales no matter what.
Mm.
Like it just, you have, at a certain point, you have to learn the skill just about
Mhm.
no matter what business you're in.
Mhm.
Issue being is in the beginning, do you have time and the skill set to learn that issue, or do you already have the skill set? And like if you have a sales background, makes it easier. But for most people, they don't have a sales background. And if you're taking 20 sales calls a week, that's 80 hours or 2 work weeks you're going to get back a month by hiring a closer and giving them, 10, 15% of your revenue, depending on what your price point is. All depends on what the OT or on track earnings are, right? But it's like biggest pulling point. Next would be, the EA that can help with fulfillment, right? Or help with marketing or, whatever it is. But you're looking for that lever that can pull you back the most time. So you can either dump that time back into marketing or sales and make up for, whatever you're putting out the door in payroll and growth.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And a lot of this just comes back to knowing your numbers. How much does it cost for you to acquire a customer? And that includes your time. Like, how
Mhm.
much would you be making per hour? How much time are you going to have to put into marketing to acquire that customer to then close the sale? And oftentimes, if you are able to remove yourself from the sales process, your acquisition cost actually goes down
Mhm.
because you can spend more time doing other things that are going to be higher
Needle
revenue
movers. Yeah.
tasks, which is great. You just have to understand what those margins are. The other thing is that people, and I feel like this is such an abstract concept to try and explain, but you're going to know exactly what I mean. People will bring people on for these roles in the beginning, and instead of delegating, they abdicate. And so they're
Mm.
like, "Here, this is your problem now."
Mm. Mhm.
And it happens with sales. The other big hire is people are like, "Oh, I'm just going to hire a social media manager." And
Yeah.
then my lead flow will stay the same and I can do all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Wrong. That's wrong. A social media manager manages social media. They're not a CMO. Those are two different things. And so then people hire people and then panic when their revenue starts to drop. And it's because they pulled themselves too far out and they just handed it off. Same thing with sales. People hire a closer and then they're like, well, that's it. They're going to go make sales for me. You're going to have to do the development with that person. You're going to need to hold them accountable. You're going to need to make sure that they're updating the pipeline. You're going to be reviewing calls. You're going to be doing sales meetings. And so I think the hardest thing for people to wrap their head around as they scale is the different role that you move into. And everyone says, oh, well, you become a CEO. You really don't become a CEO until you have a team of like 5 to 9.
Yeah.
When you are making those first like 1 to 5 hires, you're a trainer and then you're a manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you can become a CEO after your team gets a little bit bigger. And that's where you step into those visionary tasks. But for most people, and everyone's like, oh, I'm the CEO.
Yeah. Yeah.
More accurately, you're probably the COO. And I think if more people could just wrap their head around that, it would be smoother sailing for people.
Well, maybe on that for you guys, like I know, it's a buzzword, right? Everyone in the marketing space, business space loves to throw out that term. If you guys were going to work with a scaling client or if someone's listening right now and it's like, here's kind of how you've known you're really in your actual CEO operating type of identity, behavior, or that seat is really where you're operating from right now. For you guys, what does that look like? Or what does that mean to you guys? Maybe even as a bumper lane to be like, hey, we're staying in the spot where we're most leverageable right now.
So Soren and I have kind of gone back and forth, and we kind of tag team different areas of the business that make the most sense just based on our strengths. If you've ever read the book Rocket Fuel, Soren's more of the visionary and I'm more of the integrator. And so when someone tells me what to do, I just kind of, or like what the vision is, like what the goal is, I just kind of intuitively know what's going to get us there. Yes, I look at the numbers of the business and all of the things, but I just know. I'm like, okay, this is the thing that's the blocker.
Yeah.
And so for us, what we've had to kind of balance is I'm the face of the brand. And so when I say something, whether it should or shouldn't, it tends to carry a little bit more weight with people, be it clients, team, whatever. And so we've had to kind of be more strategic with the roles that we're both filling. And for a long time, I mentally would have placed myself in the CEO role. But I think with the way that we actually manage things now, I think Soren's actually more of the CEO and I would consider myself more of the COO because I'm the one that's like, if we need a system, typically I'm building it. If we're mapping out, kind of a strategy, then I'm like, okay, this is how I think we should do this thing. He also does some of that. It just kind of varies with where we work in the business. But I think that when you're like truly being a CEO, other people are solving problems and bringing it to you to then make a final decision, and or the problems that they can't solve are rolling up to you.
Right.
If you're in that position, then I would say you're more of a CEO. If you are telling people exactly what to do and you're still adding individual tasks for every single person and you're doing the strategy and you're doing, even if you're managing a lot of people, I'd still put you more in that like operational role, not necessarily a CEO. And the thing is also, everyone wants to be the CEO so they can call themselves that. You're the founder. That's in my head, like that's enough of a title. And
Yes.
so then put yourself in the organization where it makes the most sense and where you are going to be able to give yourself the most leverage. And so for us, like Soren is really, really good at explaining things to clients, distilling pretty complex information down into something simple that they can implement. He's really good at like managing them and moving them forward and showing them based off of, here's the numbers, here's the data, here's what it's telling us. Go do this. And so that's where he really thrives. And so he's more so involved in and over the client delivery and support and that area of the business. For me, where I thrive and what I'm good at is the marketing and specifically the psychology piece. And so I write content, I script content, I write emails, I work with Sasha on setting strategy. And so, yeah, I'm kind of a hybrid between like ops and marketing. And then I'd say Soren's more of the CEO and also like head of client success. And
Well, it's like
so,
really like
yeah.
understanding the traits or the values that you have or the skills that you have. And then I think it's really like based off what you're saying, the title that you guys feel those are most applicable to, and then try to stay in that bucket to not have to be all things in all places.
Mhm.
And you mentioned obviously because you guys have hired and developed a team. And I'm curious when you think about those skills, you think about those aspects. For you, do you guys then, as a result, when you're building your team, and maybe even for the people you've hired in the past, the people who work for you now, when you hire them, are you hiring off the person or are you hiring off the position, meaning like the ability to do, i.e. the skills and, the qualifications, if you will? Or are you guys of the mindset where like the person, i.e. their personality, their values, things like that are more of an influencing factor for you guys so that you can kind of have the team be equal or be balanced?
It's a little bit of both. For me, when I'm specifically looking to, and it changes a little bit from position to position, but I'm looking at culture, values, then skills.
Mm,
Most skills can be taught. If it's a position where it's something that I haven't done, then I'm obviously going to put more emphasis on skills. But if somebody is the best closer in the world, but they're an asshole to the team,
yeah.
I can't do anything with that. And so it's primarily about the person, and it's not just their personality and those things that a lot of people talk about and throw around. It comes back to their values, their integrity, and their care for our mission and what we're doing.
Mm,
Above all else, I need someone who genuinely cares about what we're doing and genuinely cares about the clients. Even if they're a marketing hire, a video editor, I need someone who's going to genuinely care about the clients. Because even in like taking that example of a video editor, right? Yes, there needs to be a certain level of technical skill. I also need them to care deeply about editing and creating content in a way that's going to truly be of service to our audience
right.
and is going to communicate what they need. And so even for a super technical position like that, it always comes back to service. It always comes back to serving the clients and serving our audience.
Mm,
And what I've found is that any business that comes from a position of service
mhm,
is going to make an impact. And where a positive impact is, revenue follows.
mm,
And so, with taking that frame on it, I apply that to hiring, I apply that to marketing, I apply that to the way that we build our systems. I apply that to our onboarding and offboarding process. I apply that
yeah.
to our delivery process. And so it's just about them and getting them the result that they want, because ultimately, if we're not able to produce that, we don't have a business.
Mm.
And so that's always my number one.
Well, I know you guys are like everyone knows you like for the theme of what you guys talk about, which is marketing. You're definitely
Mhm.
complete ninjas at marketing. And I know from that, as you just said, like there's an aspect of service, which is for you guys when you've scaled, even with the emphasis on marketing, how much of your scaling would you say has come from acquisition versus retention?
Oh, geez. We're like,
Like which I guess do you think has contributed the
oh, it's like
most?
95%, 90% acquisition probably.
Okay.
We're So like for the first 3 years, we didn't even try and retain.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
We were like, here's your stuff, go do it. And they're like, great, this is amazing. We're like, bye.
yeah.
Like, have such a nice life.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we didn't even try. We were just like,
Okay.
we hated money apparently. And we're
Yeah.
like,
Which just goes to show that the level of skill that you guys have at marketing, because, a lot of people sometimes will have, as you were saying earlier with lead flow, they may have like a small pool of leads, but then they really have to leverage retention to grow. And so to me, what I take from that is it just goes to show the level of skill that you guys have when it comes to marketing, to have that level of lead flow, to be like, we're going to continue, even if you were saying, Soren, for the first couple of years, it wasn't even, we didn't have capacity to focus on it. The marketing still was bringing in so many people. And so everyone's dream, obviously, is to have boatloads of leads, so many that you just don't know what to do with, right? And you guys talk about neuromarketing. And I think for the person listening, they may be like, what the heck is that? What does that mean? How does that work into the ecosystem of their marketing and their business? So can you guys explain, like, what is neuromarketing? And with that, why has that been so influential for you guys when it comes to marketing for you, for clients? Kind of like, how does that work in the ecosystem if someone wants to scale their business?
okay, I'm so deeply passionate about this.
Okay. She's like,
So
let's go. Okay.
that's I mean, that's the why, is because I love it so much and I'm so interested in it and it just lights me up to talk about it. So with and even coming back to that, the original point is like the lead flow versus retention is like, you can get very far without attempting to retain. However, the next level comes from retention.
Mm,
And so that's where like building out the rest of your offer suite so that you actually have a place for people to go is going to be so key. And I actually think that there's a level of continuity with the neuromarketing all the way through to retention, because in its simplest form, you are only attracting people who truly need the thing that you're offering.
mm,
And so you eliminate a lot of the tire kickers and the people who aren't a fit and the people who aren't going to get results and the people who aren't going to retain up front. You filter those people out before you even sign them. And so essentially, neuromarketing, researchers have done a lot of brain imaging with fMRIs and EEGs to see how our brains react to certain stimuli. And so they've done a bunch of studies. One of the very notable ones was they showed packaging and marketing material of different cigarette companies.
mm,
And they asked the people a series of questions about, does this packaging make you more or less likely to buy this thing? And all of these different polling questions. They then scanned their brains when showing them and exposing them to the stimuli. And what they found was that people have no idea why they do the things that they do. And when they're shown a cigarette package with imaging of a lung that's decaying,
mm,
they go, oh, yes, of course, I would be less likely to buy that. Their brain's going, ding, 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 ding. Give that to me, give
mm,
that to me. And so they're not even consciously aware of the things that are driving them to make decisions. And
mm.
so what they've been able to assess is essentially when certain stimuli is introduced, so certain marketing material or
Yeah.
branding or things like that, what does it actually do in the brain? How does the brain light up and how does it react? And so taking that information and the understanding of the neuroscience, I took it upon myself I'm a big reader, but this was kind of an undertaking even for me. I started diving into textbooks, neuroscience, psychology, because what I found overwhelmingly to be true is that the books about sales psychology and psychology as applied to marketing, they're
Mhm.
one, very surface level, and two, they are applied to older styles of marketing. When you're reading these books, they're talking about a campaign that they did with a billboard. They're
Right.
not relating
Right.
it to content at all. And so what I did was I went through all of these books that initially kind of sparked my interest. And I was like, okay, these are the things about the brain that I really need to understand. I did the research. And then what I did was I took and I applied that to what we already knew to be working with content marketing. And then we also tested and applied those principles to the content marketing. And so the result of that was something that we've coined as content neuromarketing. And essentially, all we're doing is we're taking the key 8 triggers that need to happen within the brain, within the 3 decision layers of the brain. So you've got your primal brain, you've got your limbic system, your emotional brain, and you've got the neocortex, your rational brain. And so the primal brain basically acts as a filter for information. That's your survival instincts. And so you have to get past the primal brain to get to the emotional brain, to then get to the rational brain, to have somebody make a decision. And it's funny because I was realizing that that lines up exactly with the flow of successful content. You hook somebody in, so you get information past the filter of the primal brain. You activate their emotional resonance, mirror neurons, and just emotional responses within the limbic system. And then you push into the logical part of the brain. You kind of bridge that gap. People more or less make the decision. They make emotional decisions. They've basically made the decision, but then to actually justify it, feel good about it, and hand you their credit card, that's where the rational part of the brain comes in, which is looking for risk relief. It wants to make sure that this is actually going to work, which again, this is exactly what we're doing in a video. We're hooking people in, we're activating the emotional response, and then we're tying it into that rational piece that's going to bridge the gap and actually get them to buy something. So we started more intentionally. We were already doing it in a lot of ways accidentally. We started more intentionally applying it to our content, and then brought in the rest of those triggers that have also been well researched, so we know what the brain's going to do, and started bringing those into to our content. Then what we discovered was this works really great. We don't even need as many views as we were getting. It's actually better to get less views and just convert at a higher rate. And so now we used to post videos all the time intentionally that would get 100, 500 million views. And we just simply don't do that anymore because we don't need to, because we will actually make more money and convert at a higher rate if we just get 1,000 views on a video, the super targeted messaging, than if we got a video with 1 million views, because then we don't backlog our sales process and it's more consistent. I'm able to consistently post a video, and I know that I can get a minimum of 1,000 views every single time I post. Sometimes up to 5,000, that's fine. It's not going to clog our pipeline. And we know what those conversion numbers are going to be coming out of those. And so we're able to stabilize our lead flow in a way that isn't possible with virality, because even though, yes, this rush of leads sounds really great, a rush of leads 1 month is a lot of lost revenue potential. But if you can bring those leads in at a more consistent but more controlled rate, you're going to make more money over time because you're able to convert those people, have a more seamless process, and then you have the retention. So then you're building while you're kind of doubling as you go. So that's kind of what we started doing. And then we started, again, more intentionally applying those different triggers to client content. And basically, it was just very overwhelming for people. I think that people need to know all the information. Here's all the theory. Here's what the brain's doing. Here's all this stuff. And then you can go do it all by yourself and see you later. And so what we shifted to is we created what we're calling the Converts framework. And so that brings in each of those 8 triggers, but it's in a more controlled way.
Digestible.
It's not, so it's not overwhelming for people. So for each letter of the framework, that's one psychological trigger that needs to be hit, one button that needs to be pressed. You do all of those in a week. congratulations, you're making super consistent sales. So yeah, that's kind of
Which
the
is so
evolution.
interesting because it challenges a couple things that are considered to be quote unquote typical or common in social media, which is a lot of people will talk about there's a big narrative around having a big following, having lots of views. That is something that's a massive contributor to success, which I know Soren was saying earlier, like really is not correlated at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then even to your point of the fact that it has to go through these three layers, I think, to your mention of the buyer types kind of potentially being like outdated. It's interesting because as you said, they kind of have to always go through these three layers, even if it is at the root an emotional decision. That challenges everything we've been taught
Mm-hmm.
about buyer types, which is the idea that you have this very singular way of operating, this very singular way of making decisions. And so, I think that for people listening, I think it's important because it shows also based off what you're noting, like the complexity of a buyer, but
Mm-hmm.
also even though there might be a complex system in which they make decisions, it's simple from an execution standpoint to kind of hit on all those triggers at the same
Yeah,
time.
exactly. That's the thing is like, yes, it is very complex and there's a lot to understand. But also, if you just know what boxes to check, the brain's good. It
Yeah.
doesn't really care how you do
Yeah.
it or in what order, And also to your point about the buyer types, because I did a lot of research trying to reconcile kind of my understanding there because I had done a lot of research on the just personality types and buying behavior prior to even diving into brain scans.
Yeah.
And the conclusion that I've come to is that the buyer types are like the five love languages. And so, you've got your physical touch and words of affirmation and gifts and all the things. And, even if you primarily are a physical touch person, if that's the only thing that's present in a relationship, then it's not a well-rounded, fulfilling relationship.
Right.
And so what I've learned is as I've kind of reconciled the two is the fact that those buyer types act in the same way. Somebody might be primarily a driver buyer. That might be their buying love language. But if the other things that the brain needs to feel safe aren't present, then you're not creating a well-rounded, fulfilling relationship for that buyer. And so I think that the understanding of the buyer types is wonderful because it can give you some direction on a person to person basis.
Right.
And also, I think that it's more impactful in a sales conversation than it is specifically within marketing because, you're not just making a video that's for analytical buyers, right? You're
Right.
making a video that's probably hitting several of the triggers if you're doing it correctly. And so when we're having a one-to-one conversation, to know that you're talking to somebody who's super expressive, so then you kind of roughly know what things they're going to pay more attention to, what things they're going to care about, and what area of the brain they tend to lean on a little bit more in decision making. That can be very, very helpful, but in a lot of ways it's oversimplified from a marketing standpoint.
Okay. There's so much. I feel like there would be like 4 hours of like, okay, tell us all the things as to all the frameworks, all the levels. And I want to go on a total non sequitur because you triggered my brain. And now I was saying before we press record today that there was something that I was kind of drafting up questions and I was like, there's something that everyone wants to know. And you're mentioning the love languages. My brain was like, ding, ding, ding. So the two of you have worked together how many years now?
4, I mean, the whole time we've had the
4,
business.
4.5.
5.
Okay. So, like, needless to say, we've got some time, we've got some experience under our belt.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are partners in business and you're partners in life, and you're spending all day, every day together, which, to be honest, some people during COVID split because of how much time they were spending together. And yet,
Yeah.
you guys are building an empire. And so, with this, we see like the Hermoses, and everyone's like, I would love to have a relationship like that where I've got my partner and we're both obsessed with business and we're both scrappy entrepreneurs and we're doing it. But I feel like very rarely do people actually get an opportunity to hear from both parties at the same time as to how the heck do you guys make that work? And so I guess the question would be, how do you guys navigate partners in business, partners in life? And like, what are those boundaries or what does that dynamic look like to be able to have space between those two categories, or do you have space? Are you having dinner and you're talking about SOPs? Like, what does that look like? How do you guys navigate that dynamic?
Well, we got to have taxable expenses somehow. So
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True.
It's a write-off.
It's a
Date night,
write-off.
it's a write-off.
I
Yeah.
love it.
What do you
Soren, what
think,
do
Soren?
you think in
Tell
your
us.
Well,
lens?
we haven't killed each other yet.
Yet.
Anyways,
Yep.
no, our personalities go together really well. It definitely comes with its challenges. I think the best thing, again, most people under communicate, probably want to over communicate, especially if you're going to try and do something like this. And we have our differences. There are issues that we have had arguments over for years in the business about certain things, how I think things should be done versus how Kenda thinks things should be done. And we have like disagreements, but again, it is just kind of like, there's the core principles that you agree on. Kenda was talking about like culture and values fit first, and then skills third. And you kind of want to operate the same way like that in your relationships, right? Like you want to make sure that you align on core values first, and then everything else kind of doesn't matter. Because as long as you know what your core values are, you know what direction you're headed. It doesn't necessarily matter what tools you use to get there, or whether you walk or run or bike or swim, right? It just, you're headed in that direction. So that's kind of, how I look at it. It definitely has its challenges. It's really funny. One time I was like, I didn't have anything going on, and we were living in Denver at the time. So it was snowing. It was like in 22, and I was so mad because like 21 it snowed. 22 we get like ski passes. Finally, I was like, we're finally making money. I can finally I've always wanted to ski. Anyways, so I like take off. I'm like, I'm gonna go ski a half day up at Breck. I roll my eyes because a half day at Breck is like sarcasm when it's snowing on I-70. Like even if you only ski half the day, like getting back down I-70, like, oh man, you just don't so much time.
Driving is half a day. I-70.
But I get up there, I'm on the ski lift, and I'm talking to these guys, and I'm like, oh yeah. They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work with my wife. And both of them, they're much older than me. They're like in their 50s. They were shook up because they're like, oh yeah, I'd be divorced if I worked with my wife. And I just thought that was so funny because I was like, at least to me, it's not that hard. It's not that crazy. And I think like the whole thing is just like perspective on it again. And kind of also, I made the joke, expensible dinners, right? We do talk about business over dinner more
A
often
lot.
than we probably should, but we try and separate like personal and business life. And we also like try and do things like I try and plan a date night once a week, right? Even if it's just, going and getting dinner somewhere close by. Right.
And taking his sister with us. So she third wheels with us a lot.
Yeah.
Date
Well,
night
I know
with Bailey.
some people will say, when you're working with a partner, that you have to have these times where you don't talk about business, and it's like we are, putting our phones away and we're just connecting. But then you also have the other side of the coin where people say, but why would we do that when we're obsessed with the business and it's literally our passion, it's our love, and our the thing that we're both in love with, or that we love the best? Why would we not talk about it? It's like, this is something we're doing and we're kind of co-creating together. And so for you guys, do you feel like you would recommend someone to have space with their partner away from business? Or do you feel like it kind of being able to talk about it and share it is part of why you guys enjoy it so much?
I think it's a little bit of both. And it's also, to be successful in business, to be successful in a marriage, to be successful in anything, you have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence. And so I think for some people, they may need to have it super structured. For us, I think we can kind of tell when the other person's kind of burnt and needs a break. And we're able to just adapt. And, it's the cliche where people are like, marriage isn't 50-50. It's whatever percentage you're able to give. And that's kind of true.
Yeah.
Sometimes 50-50, both of us want to talk about the business and we're both on, and that's great. And sometimes I don't want to hear another thing about business ever again. I'm like, get that away from me.
Yeah.
And I think we're both good at picking up on that, and also just communicating.
Yeah.
Sometimes one of us will just say, okay, I don't want to talk about business anymore tonight. And the other just respects that.
The question that I'm wondering is like, okay, so say you have an argument in business, right? So you have a little bit of a disagreement, a little bit of a tension. Or on the contrast, maybe you have a disagreement in your personal life, in your marriage, and you just had, you said this way, and it bothered me, and now I'm pissed at you. Some partners would have some breathing room. They'd go to work, they would decompress, they might chat with a friend, and then they go back home and they say, hey, about yesterday. Instead, you guys have to either close the laptop and go have dinner together, or you're waking up in the morning and you're starting business together today. So I guess the curiosity would be like, if you are trying to navigate these dynamics, and obviously, as anybody would as you said, in a relationship, personally or in business, you're going to have situations. How do you guys navigate having natural, normal conflicts while also having to protect the outcome of like team and marketing and making sure the whole thing still happens while still obviously having each other at like the forefront of it all?
I mean, we just hash it out. I mean, just like any other team member, if you had a disagreement or if you had a partner that isn't your partner that is in your business, I mean, you'd hash it out and you'd get to a conclusion and decide what you guys are going to do to move forward. And so we just do that. I think that we both have the same vision for the future. We both want the same things and we're both working towards the same outcome. And I think there's a level of humility that's required because there have been times where Soren and I disagree about how something should be done in the business or about what something should look like visually when we create it. And it's kind of just, know when to pick your battles because there's
Mm,
things where and also know if it's like, is it a fatal error or not?
yeah.
If it's something that is not going to bring the business crashing and burning, but we disagree on it, usually one of us will just be like, fine, let's try it your way and let's see what it does. And there's been plenty of times where I was adamant that something needed to be done a certain way. And I finally just stepped back and was like, you can do it your way, but you have to do it. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna build it.
Yeah.
And he did, and it worked better than what I would have thought, or probably better than what I would have wanted to do. And
Mm,
I think vice versa has happened. And so it's humility, knowing when to step back and decide that, like, this isn't a fight worth winning. It really
mm,
doesn't matter. The second thing is just a mutual respect
yeah.
because I think we have a very good marriage and very healthy relationship. And I think that that comes because we do respect each other and we also take a very realistic perspective as to each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Mm,
And there's certain things that I'm great at that Soren's terrible at. And there's things that he's great at that I'm terrible at. And rather than weaponizing those things against each other,
yeah.
we just leverage the things that we're better at and work together. And I think we've chosen to take that approach because of the respect that we have for each other, because we understand each other well.
Mm,
And we're both working towards the same goal.
yeah.
Ultimately, even if we disagree on something, we're not on separate sides. We're on the same team. We're in the business, right? There may be different ways that something could be done,
Mm,
but we both just want what's best for the business at the end of the day, and we both know that about each other. And so I
yeah.
think it makes it easy, and because we do respect each other, we also trust each other. And so when one of us says, "No, I really think that we need to do it this way," the other person is typically willing to step back and allow them to do that. And, you know, a lot of people talk about how you need to have separation. You need to have your own things. You need to have your
Yep.
own friends and your own hobbies and your own whatever. And while I do agree with that, I think what is equally and or even potentially more important is to have shared hobbies and shared interests that you
Mm,
both enjoy.
yeah.
And the business just happens to be one of those things for the both of us. And we also, because another question we get asked is like, well, how do you prioritize? Does your marriage come first? Does the business come first?
Mm-hmm.
And our marriage always comes first. And they also feed into each other. We're going to be less stressed. And, the number one cause of divorce is financial problems.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we're going to have less stress. We're going to have less things to disagree about if the business is healthy and doing well. And also, the business is going to be healthy and do well if we ourselves are healthy and able to step into the business as a united front.
Yeah.
And it's just such a blessing, really, to be able to have something that we both care so deeply about, that we're both so passionate about, and we get to build it together.
Well, I also think about, like, exactly as you said, think about the blessing of how much time, like when you guys are fast forward and you're 90, that you got to spend together that most couples spend majority, like we're talking 8 hours a day, away from one another. And yet you guys are in it together all day, every day. And so, like, the also experience of how much more of, like, genuinely life you're going to be able to experience together because you're doing this is 10x of what other people will. And I think that you hit on something really important. I'm thinking for anyone who is working or considering working with a partner, which is that basically the health of your marriage is going to present in the business. So I'm like, and I love that you noted that, because basically if you guys didn't have healthy communication, that would present in the business. If you guys held resentment, that would present within the business. So really, the reason you're able to work super well together in the business is because you guys also, just in general, without even any business context, really respect each other, have good communication with each other, understand, again, as you said, like, skills of one another, where one is more leveraged than the other. And I'm thinking, even Soren, to your point of, like, the guys on when you went skiing, I think, which I don't know how to say it like any other way other than bluntly, like, I think there's also a lot of people who don't like their partner. Like, who
Yeah.
who don't like genuine, like, I don't know how else to say that, but, like, who don't like genuinely spending time with their partner. They find their partner to be a burden, or they find their partner after a certain point, it's like, I can't be around this person. And I think, it's really inspiring, because obviously you guys have been working in business together for several years, and you're doing so in a harmony way outside of business and in business. And obviously, like, it sounds silly, but obviously it shows you guys actually really genuinely like each other and spending time with each other. And also that you actually have a healthy dynamic. And I think it's an invitation, maybe if someone's working with their partner and not enjoying that, or they think maybe like the guys on the ski slope, there's no freaking way I could do that, that maybe it's less of an invitation to think about the business side, and it's more an invitation to think about the actual relationship or the marriage, and being like, why do I not want to be around my partner? Or why do I have a threshold of how much of them I can quote unquote handle?
1,000%. And the thing is that the things that annoy you about your partner are typically a reflection of either something that you don't like about yourself, or an insecurity or a weakness on your own end. And I think if you can just carry that awareness. And the other thing is that, we don't treat each other differently inside of the business because we're married. If we disagree about something, our team will tell you. We'll have it out on the team meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's never personal mingled with business. It's always one or the other. And if it's personal, then it's obviously not going to happen on a team meeting. But like if we're disagreeing about something on a team meeting, I just as with every single person on our team, they know that I ask for their opinions. I genuinely want their opinions. I require their feedback. And when they give it to me, sometimes I agree and sometimes I don't. And we have the same conversation that Soren and I would have. And so, whether it's him or Ashley or Sasha, it doesn't matter. If there's something that we're not aligned on, we're just going to figure it out on the meeting. And so we don't like get offline and then go scream at each other about this business thing. That just doesn't happen because we
you treat each other like a team member. Like, I'm
Yeah.
treating you like everybody else, to make it fair and to make it equal.
Yeah.
Okay,
Exactly.
so I feel like I would interview you guys for like 2 hours about the relationship. There's so much to unpack there. But I want to end with having and asking each of you. You obviously work with a lot of different scaling entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of opinions as to what someone focuses on, or what you might recommend as a piece of advice for someone scaling their business. So, Soren, I'll start with you. If you were thinking of someone who wants to rapidly scale their business, And it could be personal, it could be mindset, it could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be whatever. And they really want to scale. And obviously, you've worked with a ton of people who've done this and your own. What's something that you would give as advice, maybe a perspective, a kind of quote that you live by, something that you would recommend to them that you would anchor into if they really want to scale their business or themselves?
That's a great question. So we'll assume they already have a business, they already have sales coming in, whatever, right? I am a really big fan if you already have something working, see how you can like 10x it, 100x it, whatever. And if you can't, what is the lever you can pull that's going to give you the greatest return in your business? Every business is different. Again, like if it's marketing and you're posting one piece of content per day and you want to 2x your business, and this doesn't always work, but like what if you post 2 or 3 or 4 times a day? What if you figure out how to distribute that content effectively onto another platform to double your lead generation, right? What are those levers that you can pull to get more mileage out of what you're currently doing? As far as a saying, man, I mean, this one comes from Kenda, but you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. And if you don't know your numbers, whether it's social media, whether it's your finances, whether it's your fulfillment, it's going to come back to bite you, right? You got to know what's going on. So yeah, that's kind of like my take on it.
So I want that on a sweater, okay? I want that on a sweater. I need that on a hoodie. That's such a good line. So good. Kenda, what about you?
Well, he took mine. I was going to say that. You get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Yeah.
And I I will also add on to that. You cannot make the mistake of thinking that other people think the same way that you do.
Mm.
And so, I think the biggest, most relevant thing for us for the last few months has been around the team and building the team and developing the team. And you might expect someone to do something a certain way. You might expect that they're going to care a certain way. You might expect that they're going to think about something a certain way. But what is required is a certain level of inspection. And so holding people accountable, not just telling people what to do, but documenting it, following up on it, reviewing it, giving feedback on it is key. And kind of same thing Soren said, it is like just about any business is scalable. You just need to find what lever to pull. And you find those levers by just looking at your data. And then you're not chasing and creating solutions for problems that you don't have. So common. People think that they need to make better content. They need a new content strategy. They need this, they need that. But if you, zoom in and actually look at the numbers, your show rate is trash. If you could refine your show rate a little bit, suddenly you're doubling your sales without increasing your lead flow or your close rate at all, right? And so there's always the little levers in business, and they'll be revealed by your metrics. And it's always the little refinements that make the big difference. And when you try to make a huge shift, when you try to make a big change in your business, you're basically starting over. And if you can instead find those little things that are going to, my analogy that I always use is barrel racing. You don't need to change the direction that you're running the pattern. You don't need to go from running right side first to left side first. What you really need to change is the way your hand is, your hand positioning around the second barrel. What you really need to change is the way you shift your weight around the third barrel. Those are the things that actually give you the exponential growth, is those little tiny tweaks that come from refinement. And that's what separates the businesses that never hit $1 million from everyone else. And also the businesses that get stuck in the $1 to $3 million swamp. Is $2 million is where businesses go to die. And what happens is that they think that because they've heard what got you here won't get you there. And so they think that they need to do something different.
Right.
You don't need to do anything different. You just need to look at your data to decide what you need to do better. And then you focus all of your time, energy, and effort onto that one thing. And that's it.
I know it's not, I think for most people it's not sexy because they're like, you mean I just have to refine and I have to tweak things? That's not as exciting as something totally new. But I very much agree because I think, it kind of sounds basic. My business has been the same since almost the first day that I started. The offers are pretty much identical. The team has grown, but other than that, marketing, generally speaking, the same strategy, just different platforms. So
Yeah.
I think for some people that's frustrating because they're like, there has to be something else that I'm just not touching yet, which is the reason I'm not successful. Because
Right.
if the resources you have in front of you are the reason you're not successful, you have to own that and eat that. And that's hard a lot of the time for people
Yes.
to absorb or to deal with. Okay, so obviously you guys know now after an hour and a half why I'm obsessed with the both of them. So if somebody wants to learn more from both of you, I know for a fact are going to be nerding out on all things neuromarketing or just in general want to listen to more of these kind of conversations from you, where are the best places for people to kind of learn more about not only services but also just in general both of you?
Well, of course, there's Instagram. We have the same Instagram handles at Kenda.Laney, at Soren.Laney, and podcast, YouTube. But the most exciting thing, we, the last 3 days, and we just put it live because we got the hit of inspiration and decided to do it. We launched a done for you freebie. And so people are able to apply. Obviously, not everyone will qualify, but people can apply, come through. We're going to audit their entire account, rewrite 5 pieces of content to get more leads in the door. So give them a few levers they can pull, get some extra leads, and they'll get 3 days of complimentary Slack support, as well as a live gap assessment call with the team. So if they want us to like redo their content, that's the best way to do it. And if they qualify, we'll do it completely free. Otherwise, we have, I think I gave you a resource to link in the show notes for
Yep.
kind of a content planning structure that people can also use. And yeah, I think that covers it.
Feel like you guys are everywhere. Your YouTube, your TikTok, your Instagram, you're everywhere. So I definitely, that's epic, by the way. That sounds incredible. So if you're hearing that, I would say like run. But if someone obviously is loving today's conversation, then I would head to their socials. Honestly, you guys post content so much every single day on every platform. So like if you're even, today is truly, because I know both their brains is like a appetizer. Like when I'm talking at those fancy restaurants where the portions are small, that's what today was in the podcast. So I would highly recommend going and binging because you guys will be obsessed with a lot of the stuff they do. And I will tell you, and I say this about very few people, these two really know business, like actual business, not Instagram business. I'm talking actual business. And so I really recommend also if you're looking for support, they have great programs, great supports in masterminds, like group coaching, all of the things. And so I would head over there too if you like their brain and want more of that. They've got incredible support. So thank you guys so much for today. This was so good. I know we went severely over time. I appreciate you guys both, but thank you guys both for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
us.
This was so fun.
Yeah, of course. Of course. All righty, you guys. Well, we will see you on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.